Strozzapretti, for those who don't speak Italian yet, because I'm going to slowly teach you, strozzapretti are wonderful ricotta dumplings, and they're called strozzapretti. Strozza means to choke, preti is a priest, and literally priest choked over this delicious dish. So here are strozzapretti. I'm going to teach you how to make gnocchi ricotta with radicchio sauce, and I'm going to teach you how to make this wonderful, delicious, zesty ricotta cheesecake. So stay with me. Buongiorno, benvenuti, welcome. Welcome to my ricotta kitchen. And ricotta is very versatile, but we're going to begin with making gnocchi ricotta. Now, here I have some ricotta draining overnight, and that's very important whenever you do anything with ricotta. But we begin with some eggs. Now, I know gnocchi. Gnocchi, you're familiar with gnocchi because you watch me make many times. But these are made out of ricotta. And the beauty of this is that you don't need to cook the potatoes. You don't need to, if you have some ricotta, some nice dry ricotta, you can whip up gnocchi in 15, 20 minutes for dinner. And we'll season the eggs with a little bit of salt, a little bit of fresh pepper, a little nutmeg. Nutmeg is a spice that is used in Italy often, especially making pasta or gnocchis. And not too much of it, because it's very pronounced, especially when it cooks. Now, the ricotta. I had the ricotta here draining overnight, and that's the best way. And just put it in a sieve, and you see it will release a lot of its water. And why do you want that? It's because otherwise it will take the humidity. This water will absorb all that much more flour. And the more flour you put, you remember in the regular gnocchis, the same thing, the heavier they get. And of course, you want this to be light. Now, what is ricotta? Ricotta. Ri means again, done again, and cotta is cooked in Italian. So how is ricotta made? I made ricotta with my grandmother. And what happens is that you take milk. We used to make goat's milk ricotta, but you can make sheep's milk ricotta and, of course, cow's milk ricotta. And what it is after you make the cheese and the major curds, the big curds, are set aside to drain to make the cheese, there's the whey that's left. And in that whey, there's still some proteins and some solid. So you reboil that, and that again forms into another curd, which is looser than the curd for the cheese. It is leaner because most of the fat went into the cheese. So you get these loose curds of milk proteins. Casein is the milk protein. And they come to the top and you drain them. And then you put them in a sack or in a sieve, and that's what ricotta is all about. It's very mild. It's wonderful. I will add some flour this time. And be careful not to add too much, because again, we want them light. I will add some parsley, some chopped parsley. And again, you can add to this any flavoring that you want. I'll add some Parmigiano Reggiano, grated Parmigiano Reggiano. Okay, here I have some margarine. And I think margarine is a nice mild herb. It goes very well with the ricotta. I use margarine a lot also with chicken. If you really want to get the flavor of an herb, let's take rosemary or whatever, just before putting it on this finished dish, blanch them in hot water or stock, and the heat will sort of break those oil molecules, and there's the flavonoids, the flavors will come right out. So here we are. It is a little bit soft, and that's what you want again. You don't want to overwork it, and you don't want a lot of flour because it just be heavy. Flour makes it heavy. And again, we want to work as we do the regular gnocchis. Make it into a cordoon. except these gnocchis are sort of a little lighter. We won't shape them. When you cook pasta, what you really want is to bring the boiling point up as quickly as possible, because if you don't do that, these gnocchis will stick at the bottom, and they will stick together. So you want them to enter with abundance of water, high temperature, they get scalded right away, they seal themselves, and then you finish cooking them. We finish the gnocchi, and just keep them separate, don't pile them, use two sheet pans if that's necessary, but you need to cook them right away. You don't want to leave them hanging around because they will sort of get wet and need more flour. But what you can do, you can boil them and just butter them and leave them on the side, and then you can reheat them somewhat. But they're best when you just cook them and serve them, and they're that easy. So let's begin with the sauce. Something that requires a little bit more work in making, the sauce requires less work because you don't want to complicate matters. In cooking, simple things and simplicity is best. The less ingredients you can put in a dish, the better it is. So for this dish, we're going to need a little garlic, pancetta, olive oil, and a little bit of stock. As simple as that. And again, Parmigiano, of course. Let me make some space here. So garlic. I love garlic, but sometimes I have difficulties in digesting it, and a lot of people do. So what I do, you can chop it up and leave it in the sauce if that's what you like, or you can do what I do. Just crack it, and what that does, again, it breaks those molecules of flavor. And actually the garlic, you know what happens in the garlic? In each cell, in the cell wall, there are the enzymes, and the flavors is inside in the center. Put in a pancetta, or when you cut garlic, and you know the more you cut it, the more flavor you get out of it, is precisely what you're doing, this interaction, this chemical interaction. Now, we'll do some radicchio. And you want to shred it, just shred it. As I have it here. And let's put it right in. Now, the bacon fat, you can drain it out if you're sensitive, or if you have dietary restrictions, or you could leave it in for flavor because you don't have that much fat or flavoring, and that's good. I sort of like that flavor. And plus, this bacon was a lean bacon. It didn't really render so much fat. And what you want is you want to braise. Now, the radicchio has that sort of little bitter taste. The actual ricotta, and that there's a little sweet, so it's a nice sort of harmony at the end between the sort of bitterness of the radicchio, the complexity of the pancetta, and the sweetness of the gnocchi. Okay, can add a little stock, a little fresh pepper. And while this is simmering, we're going to put the gnocchis. Okay, the water is boiling. And when, again, you cook pasta, you need that water to be boiling vigorously. You need that high temperature, crank everything up, and just drop them in. Give them a gentle stir. Old tradition, we used to always put this, just so as it comes up fast, it doesn't overboil and get your whole stove sort of messy. Okay. I'm looking at this, it has flavor, but I think I would like to add a little bit of raw olive oil. I love drizzling olive oil at the end. And again, it's those flavors, because if you put them in the beginning, in cooking, you lose a lot of those flavors. Oh, okay, the gnocchis are done. You see how they grow, ricotta gnocchi sort of expand they grow in about half of the size of what you put them in. So I did them a little big because, you know, the show has a time limitation, and here my producer is always after me. But make them smaller. And again, gnocchi, the less you handle it, the better. So if you can flip, I think that's the best. Now we always put cheese, this is Parmigiano Reggiano, when the heat is off, because Parmigiano Reggiano is a finished product, and you heard this before from me, if you cook it, it will divide on you. The fat and the strings, you remember? Okay. So let's plate it. Nice hot plate. Let me get actually one unslotted because we want the sauce. Now, the gnocchi, when they're like this, they're pretty stable, so you don't have to worry about them breaking down any further. So you could make a big platter. I think that's always nice, a big platter in the center of the table, but you can even serve them individually. And do serve them in a sort of a soup bowl or something so that they stay all together and they maintain their heat longer, because if you put them on a white plate, they just will run out and will cool off much faster. This is actually lavender. And it just matches the color of the radicchio. Feel free to do that. It's so nice. I mean, I love working with vegetables, with flowers, with whatever. This looks great. Yeah, it really smells wonderful. You didn't think I forgot about Strozzapretti. Well, here we are back to making Strozzapretti. Wonderful ricotta dumpling in a different way from the gnocchi that we made. You make it just as quick. So in these, we include spinach. The spinach are blanched. And again, you want to get as much water as you can out of the spinach. You let them sort of strain or drain for a while, and then you press them just with your hands. You can put them in a cloth and just twist, dry them. Because again, if they have water, water requires flour, and they become heavier. And all we want is to sort of chop them up in small pieces. Okay, this is perfect. Let me just whisk some eggs. Here I have the ricotta draining. Again, you want it dry because you don't want to use a lot of flour. A little pepper, fresh pepper is best. If you don't like to see the whole grinds of black pepper, you can use white pepper. A little nutmeg, great flavor, especially in gnocchis. Ricotta, which has been draining also. And this will sort of densen up, not with flour in them, but rather with some breadcrumbs. And in here I used it, again, to pull all the water, if there's any, to absorb it, so that the gnocchis don't fall apart. And of course, the Parmigiano Reggiano. Now you notice I haven't put any flour yet, but I will use flour to roll them in. You just flour your hands well, and you make sort of little balls with it. And then you roll them in the flour, and you set them on the side. This is quite simple. I think, you can get the family involved. I think children would love to do that. Now we need to put them to cook, and while they're cooking, the sauce will be made. And this is a wonderfully simple sauce. We'll take a little bit of butter. Fresh sage leaves. Now, sage is very intense, and it really has a wonderful, wonderful, paired with butter and Parmesan cheese, it's really wonderful for pasta dressing. But you don't want to chop it up, because eating sage could be a little bit too much. So you want the leaves, let them float around, and stay in there with the flavor. But if somebody wants to eat them, let them eat them. Now, I don't want the butter divided, so I'm going to put some stock right away. Okay, the water really vigorously boiling, a lot of water, it's salted, and we'll just plop these right in there. And again, you need space for these, they need to move in there. And these are sensitive, because as you notice, the only thing that binds them in there is the bread. Again, let me cover it, and let's get it back to boiling point as soon as we can. And this I'm going to serve, again, hot plates, remember, pasta, hot plates, and bowls again, because you want to keep them contained. I serve a lot pasta in the bowl because of the same reason, because you sort of pile it in the center, it retains its heat as you're eating it. In enjoying food, all of your senses really play a part. So you look at something, looks good, you really begin, you smell it, it reinforces that sort of excitement and begins you salivating. The sensation that you feel actually on your palate is very important, that sort of tactile sensation that happens in your mouth. It really stimulates you, and you have certain expectancy out of certain foods. Can you think of eating celery that's not crunchy? So you might not have thought of that way, but there is. And these two, you know, being so big, I guess Strozzapretti sort of just fills your whole mouth with it, and it sort of caresses you. I don't know, pasta caresses me when I eat it, and it goes down. So it's that feeling of being sort of hugged by these Strozzapretti to the point of being choked. Oh. And you don't want to work too much. You don't want to mix them. Just shake the pan to get the sauce. And we'll close the fire, and then we'll add the Parmigiano Reggiano. Okay. How many proportion? I guess as a minestra course or a pasta course. In Italy, the courses go antipasto, minestra, or pasta. And minestra, even though it means soup, means actually in the sequence of courses, a pasta course. So this is a minestra course. And if you serve it as a minestra course, I think 4 would be fine. If you serve it as a main course, then I would double that, give 8. Should we make a main course here? Okay, let me just fill it up nice for you. What do we have? 4, 7, one more. A bit of sauce. And again, the decoration of the same, the sage. And you know what I have here? The boragine flowers. The sage have the same color flowers. So I'm going to use just a little bit of boragine, if you don't mind. Oh. And they can eat that. Okay. This looks great. It has a wonderful aroma. And I truly understand why those priests were choking over this. Torta di ricotta, ricotta cheesecake, is one of those traditional desserts, Italian desserts, that's always a wonderful finish. Simple and delicious. I have separated some eggs here. Eggs, uovo. I'm going to teach you Italian, you remember? Uovo, one word at a time, uovo. And we put in sugar, zucchero. Zucchero is sugar. Like to work these, as in most desserts, to get it really sort of a pale, ribbony-like consistency. I'll add the ricotta, which has been draining. You want a dry ricotta again. Now I'm going to add half a cup of cream. Just a pinch of salt. And again, we want to get it really creamy and homogenized. I'm going to add the orange and lemon zest, and that I want mixed well in. The rest is just folding in. Here what I have some raisins soaking in rum, and I'm going to put the whole thing in. I have some pinoli nuts. Always toast them first and let them cool. It just brings out the aroma in them. You know those oils? You want to sort of break those oils and let the aromas come out. And I'm going to work the egg whites separately. I'm going to just put a pinch of salt. Okay. You want it until sort of peaks form. But of course, you know that. You've been cooking with me so long. We'll just fold the egg whites right in. And once the egg whites have been whipped, you just want to slowly fold it in and retain that airiness about it. So lightly, let's lightly butter a springform. A springform is good for this, although you can use a solid form. But since we're not using really a dough or crust, it is much easier to sort of demold it. And again, breadcrumbs. I love working with them and using them all up. You could use cookie crumbs. You could use a shell, a pie shell or a tart shell. And basically, just pour this right in. And let it bake. It will rise, and then it will sort of fall in the center. That's perfectly fine. When you pull it out, you'll see it's nice and risen, and then it falls back into the center. But that's the way it is. Just like this. Maybe we want to settle it a little bit. So just give it a little tap so it settles in. And we'll cook it for about an hour at a 375-degree hot oven. Not too high the oven, because you want it slowly to cook throughout. So here we are, ready to serve dessert, ricotta cheesecake. It's been baked and let out to cool at room temperature until it's really cool. But I like it at room temperature. I don't like it cold. You might want it cold, but I like it at room temperature. So just let sort of move the spatula around just to detach in case it is sticking someplace, and of course open the spring. Come right out. And you could serve it right out of here and cut it, but I think I'm going to just slide it on a plate because it looks so much nicer. Okay. Nice generous portion. It's nice and moist with the raisins and the pinoli nuts. And here is the raisins. We can make the same decorations out of the same ingredients. And I'd like to just pour a little bit and just sprinkle a few around the plate. While you were waiting for the cheesecake to cool, I made some candied lemon rinds. And all this is just sort of lemon rinds, cut shoestring, boiled in sugar syrup. You let them steep in sugar syrup until they cool. You drain them, and then you toss them in a lot of sugar. So this is ready, and I'm going to pour a little bit of the Muscadet wine to enjoy with this. Now, of course, powdered sugar is always an option, and it's a nice option. Gives a little bit of sort of different texture to the dish, a little bit of the lemon rinds. You know, one of my fondest sensual memory is a springtime in Sicily. And if you go there around February, Sicily is the land of the mandorle. Mandorle are almonds. And you have this whole countryside, all these white puffs of trees, and the aroma of almonds, the intense sweet aroma of almond blossom all over. So I went out here, just outside in front. Yeah. This is wild plum tree, but it'll do. It'll do for almonds. Here we are, simple, beautiful, and delicious. With this, I'm going to have a little bit of Moscatel, as I told you before. It's made out of Moscato grape. The Moscato grape grows all over Italy, and it's a wonderfully aromatic grape, and it makes excellent dessert wine. So look for this Moscatet with this cheesecake. It just goes beautiful. And salute e tutti a tavola a mangiare.